The morning sun bleeds crimson across the Pacific as Captain Julian Beckton stands on the bridge of USS Laffey, his destroyer cutting through dark waters 60 miles northwest of Okinawa. It's April 16th, 1945, Easter Sunday. The radar scope beside him pulses with green light, sweeping endlessly across a screen that will soon become his lifeline. Contact bearing 040, range 40 miles, closing fast, calls radio man Lawrence Kelly from the Combat Information Center below. His voice carries that peculiar tension of a man who knows death approaches with mathematical precision. In the gun mounts scattered across Laffey's deck, sailors like Fire Controlman George Burnett grip their weapons with sweaty palms. The 20mm and 40mm cannons gleam in the dawn light, beautiful, deadly instruments that represent America's last line of defense. These men have trained endlessly for this moment, but training never captures the raw terror of watching enemy aircraft dive directly at your ship with no intention of pulling out. Somewhere high above the cloud cover, combat air patrol fighters circle like protective hawks. F-6F Hellcats with their massive Pratt & Whitney engines and 6 50 caliber machine guns, the most advanced fighter aircraft in the world. Their pilots scan the horizon through scratched plexiglass canopies, hunting for the distinctive silhouettes of Japanese aircraft. But these aren't ordinary Japanese pilots approaching. These are kamikaze, men who've already written their final letters home, pilots who've embraced death as their mission's ultimate success. They carry 550-pound bombs beneath their wings and harbor no intention of returning to base. The question hanging in the salt-thick air isn't whether the kamikazes will attack. It's whether America's revolutionary combat air patrol system can stop them. Can systematic defense triumph over suicidal determination? In the next 80 minutes, this mathematical equation will be written in fire, blood, and the screaming metal of aircraft torn apart by defensive fire. 6 months earlier, the mathematical certainty of American victory seemed absolute. By October 1944, U.S. Navy fighter direction had evolved into a lethal science. Combat air patrol tactics could intercept conventional attacks with devastating efficiency. Traditional Japanese bombing runs faced a 60% destruction rate before even reaching American ships. The remaining aircraft then confronted a wall of anti-aircraft fire that eliminated another 50% of survivors. But Lieutenant Yukio Seki understood mathematics differently. At 23, this Naval Academy graduate from Ehime Prefecture possessed the analytical mind of an engineer and the heart of a warrior facing impossible odds. Recently married to his beloved Mariko, Seki had served as a flight instructor, teaching young pilots the conventional tactics that were failing so catastrophically against American defenses. On October 20th, 1944, Admiral Takejiro Onishi presented Seki with an equation that defied traditional warfare. What if the pilot became the weapon? What if human guidance replaced mechanical targeting? The 1st Kamikaze Special Attack Corps, 23 Zero fighters under Seki's command, would test this theory against the most sophisticated naval defense system ever created. Seki's final letter to his wife revealed the weight of this mathematical transformation. I am determined to repay the Emperor's grace by carrying out a body-crashing attack on an aircraft carrier with my own body for the Empire of Japan. These weren't the words of a fanatic, but of a man who understood that Japan's survival depended on changing the fundamental equations of naval warfare. American intelligence officers studying these new tactics felt a chill that had nothing to do with Pacific weather. Captain David McCampbell, the Navy's top ace with 34 kills, recognized the strategic implications immediately. They're not trying to return home, he told his squadron. Every plane becomes a guided missile with a human brain. The combat air patrol system had been designed to intercept aircraft that wanted to survive their attacks. fighters could pursue retreating bombers, radar could predict conventional approach patterns, and anti-aircraft crews could calculate lead times for pilots attempting evasive maneuvers. But kamikazes shattered these assumptions with terrifying simplicity. Combat information centers across the Pacific Fleet began tracking disturbing new patterns. Kamikaze formations would approach normally, then break apart at 50, 60-mile ranges, exactly where CAPI fighters expected to make their interceptions. Individual aircraft would then employ radical altitude and course changes, using cloud cover to hide from pursuing fighters, sometimes following returning American strike groups to blend with friendly radar returns. Vice Admiral John McCain recognized the threat immediately and began revolutionary counter-adaptations. He doubled fighter complements on carriers, from 38 to 73 aircraft per air group. More importantly, he established Jack patrols, small fighter groups stationed at cardinal points around the fleet, flying below 3,000 feet specifically to catch low-altitude kamikaze approaches that regular CAPI missions might miss. The Big Blue Blanket became McCain's most aggressive innovation, continuous fighter sweeps over Japanese airfields, destroying kamikazes at their source rather than waiting for defensive interceptions. For 3 straight days in December 1944, American fighters maintained round-the-clock presence over Luzon airfields, preventing enemy aircraft from taking off or landing. But the Japanese adapted too. Kamikaze pilots studied American radar limitations, learning to approach at wave-top level where search radar effectiveness dropped dramatically. They timed attacks for dawn and dusk when CAP fighter visibility suffered. Most dangerously, they began coordinating mass attacks designed to overwhelm CIC tracking capacity, launching so many simultaneous threats that American fighter directors couldn't vector interceptors effectively. By April 1945, this deadly chess match had reached Okinawa, the largest Pacific battle and the ultimate test of both systems. Radar picket destroyers like USS Laffey formed an early warning network stretching 95 miles around the main fleet. Each picket station featured 2 to 4 fighter divisions, creating multiple interception opportunities before kamikazes could reach high-value targets. The mathematics favored America, but mathematics had never accounted for the human factor that Yukio Seki had introduced 6 months earlier. As Easter Sunday dawned over Okinawa, those equations were about to face their most brutal examination. At 8:27 a.m., radar operator Seaman Jack Thompson's voice cuts through the morning calm like a blade. Multiple contacts bearing north-northwest, range 38 miles. Count shows 20-plus aircraft approaching in formation. Captain Becton feels his stomach tighten. 20 aircraft against 1 destroyer. The mathematics are simple and terrifying. In the Combat Information Center, green radar sweeps reveal the approaching formation like luminescent death. White blips moving steadily toward Laffey's position. But these aren't conventional bombers maintaining formation. As Thompson watches, the tight group begins fragmenting at exactly 50 miles out, individual aircraft peeling away on erratic courses designed to confuse targeting solutions. "They're breaking up," Thompson calls. Individual contacts spreading across 40-degree arc. I count 7, no 8 separate tracks. High above, Lieutenant Commander Roger M. Hedrick leads his 4-plane Combat Air Patrol Division through broken cloud cover. His F-6F Hellcats 6 machine guns are loaded and ready, but the tactical situation unfolding below violates every engagement rule he's trained for. The enemy aircraft aren't maintaining altitude or course. They're diving, climbing, and turning randomly while approaching the picket line. "Tally-ho!" Hedrick's wingman calls. 2 Vals bearing 270, Angels 8, diving toward the can. Hedrick rolls his Hellcat into a screaming dive, pulling 6 Gs as he attempts to intercept the lead kamikaze. His gun sight centers on the enemy aircraft. An Aichi D-3A Val dive bomber, carrying a 550-pound bomb beneath its fuselage. The Japanese pilot makes no evasive maneuvers. Instead, he adjusts his dive angle to aim directly at Laffey's bridge. Firing, Hedrick squeezes his trigger, sending 2,400 rounds per minute of 50 caliber death toward the Kamikaze. Tracers streak through morning air like deadly meteor showers. The enemy aircraft shudders under impacts, pieces of wing and engine cowling, spinning away, but the pilot maintains his dive. On Laffey's deck, Fire Controlman George Burnett watches death approach with horrifying clarity. All hell broke loose, he'll later write. They all started to dive on us at once, and poor little us all by ourselves out there, so you can see we didn't have much of a chance because they were coming from all directions, and you just can't shoot every way at once. The destroyer's 40mm guns open fire with their distinctive pow-pow-pow rhythm. Spent brass casings rain onto the deck like deadly hail. The rapid tat-tat-tat-tat of 20mm cannons joins the symphony of destruction. Gun crews pivot their weapons frantically, trying to track multiple aircraft approaching from different vectors simultaneously. But Hedrick's damaged Kamikaze keeps coming. At 8:45 a.m., the Yokosuka D-4Y Judy, carrying a 1,250-pound bomb, races toward Laffey's port side at over 300 miles per hour. Paradoxically, crew members later report that the approaching aircraft seemed to move in slow motion, the human brain's desperate attempt to process impending death. Despite the 430 rounds fired in half a minute by the 40 Meteors and 20mm guns, Burnett will remember, the Kamikaze pilot barreled through. Men instinctively raise their arms to shield their faces as burning gasoline spurts from the mangled wing and ignites a raging fire. The remainder of the plane tumbles over the starboard side and explodes close to the ship. But this is only Kamikaze number 1. At 8:47 a.m., Kamikaze number 2 screams in from starboard. Seaman Owen Ratter watches transfixed as the aircraft grows larger in his gun sight. You could see the pilot's face, he'll later recall. He was young, maybe 20. He looked determined, not crazy. That was the most frightening thing, how calm he seemed. The impact spreads aviation gasoline across gun mount number 4, immediately igniting gunner's mate Vincent Youngquist and his crew in a conflagration of burning fuel and exploding ammunition. Razor-sharp shrapnel slices through men and equipment while puncturing additional holes in the deck, through which more gasoline and flames pour into compartments below. Above this inferno, Cappy fighters continue their desperate interceptions. Lieutenant Hedrick has splashed 2 kamikazes, but 7 more aircraft circle like vultures, waiting for optimal attack angles. His ammunition indicator shows less than 200 rounds remaining per gun, enough for perhaps 30 seconds of firing. "This is Hedrick. I'm Winchester on ammo but staying on station," he radios. A fighter without ammunition can still disrupt kamikaze approaches through aggressive maneuvering, forcing enemy pilots to deviate from optimal attack profiles. At 8:52 a.m., kamikazes number 10 and 11 attack simultaneously from opposite sides. Radioman Lawrence Kelly stands at his position when the 10th Kamikaze, another Val dive bomber, barges through the defensive fire and smacks directly into his station. The collision creates pits in gun barrels up to 112 inches deep, blows gun mount shields upward several feet, and punctures large holes in surrounding deck plating. Simultaneously, Kamikaze 11 drops its bomb 2 feet inboard on the starboard side, creating a 6-foot square hole in the deck plating before disintegrating against Mount 53. The pilot and aircraft literally pulverize against the metal gun mount, bursting into flames that join the growing firestorm, consuming Laffey's aft section. Captain Becton, his uniform singed and blood trickling from shrapnel cuts, surveys the carnage around him. Everywhere you looked, You saw dive bombers or fighters converging on you, he'll later remember. All you could do was hope your gunners would get them. Kamikaze number 12 approaches at 8:54 a.m. with devastating precision. The pilot drops his bomb on the port quarter above the propeller, puncturing through deck plating to explode in a 20-millimeter ammunition room. The blast damages Laffey's steering mechanism, locking the rudder in position and forcing the destroyer into a perpetual circle, a wounded animal unable to maneuver while predators continue their attacks. In 80 minutes of continuous combat, 5 kamikazes and 3 bombs strike USS Laffey directly. 32 sailors die, and more than 70 suffer wounds. But the ship survives, testimony to both American engineering and the mathematical reality that even suicidal determination cannot guarantee tactical success against systematic defense. As smoke clears over Okinawa's blood-stained waters, the mathematics of survival reveal their harsh truth. Lieutenant Yukio Seki's revolutionary concept of human-guided weapons had indeed changed naval warfare's fundamental equations, but not enough to overcome American systematic adaptation. The statistics tell the story with brutal clarity. Of the 100 kamikaze attacks launched during the Okinawa campaign, combat air patrol fighters intercepted and destroyed 500, a staggering 45% success rate. Anti-aircraft fire accounted for another 38% of the attackers. Only 17% of kamikazes successfully struck their targets, and most of those hits occurred against smaller vessels like destroyers and escorts rather than the high-value aircraft carriers they sought. Captain Julian Becton survived Laffey's ordeal to command other ships, but the experience marked him forever. You develop a different relationship with death, he reflected years later. When you've watched young men die defending mathematical concepts, radar coverage, interception angles, ammunition expenditure rates, you understand that war is ultimately about systems competing against human will. For the kamikaze pilots who returned from failed missions, shame proved more devastating than American bullets. Flight Petty Officer Hachiro Hosokawa, who flew 5 missions without finding targets, later wrote, "We were taught that death was our success, but survival felt like failure. The Americans had turned our certainty into confusion." The tactical revolution that began with Yukio Seki's sacrifice at Leyte Gulf ultimately demonstrated the limits of individual heroism against institutional adaptation. American combat air patrol tactics evolved from reactive defense to predictive interception, creating multiple engagement opportunities that transformed desperate Japanese innovation into manageable threat. Vice Admiral McCain's Big Blue Blanket strategy proved most decisive. By destroying kamikazes at their source, American fighters eliminated the threat before it could develop. Over 600 Japanese aircraft were destroyed on the ground during the Okinawa campaign, preventing attacks that statistics suggest would have killed thousands more American sailors. But the human cost transcended any mathematical calculation. The kamikaze campaign produced over 2,300 Japanese pilot deaths while killing approximately 5,000 American servicemen and wounding 5,000 more. Each statistic represented sons, fathers, and brothers whose names are carved on memorials across 2 nations. Today's military strategists study combat air patrol evolution as foundational doctrine for integrated air defense. From radar-guided surface-to-air missiles to computer-controlled close-in weapon systems, modern naval vessels employ the same layered defensive concept that McCain pioneered against the kamikazes: multiple interception opportunities creating cumulative probability of survival. The lesson echoes across decades. Individual courage and sacrifice, no matter how profound, cannot overcome systematic preparation and adaptive tactics. In the deadly mathematics of combat, institutions that learn and evolve will always defeat those that rely solely on human will. Experience more untold stories of Gyaptau Dotai's most dramatic moments. Subscribe now and discover the human faces behind history's greatest battles.